Edmonton Sports Talk, but we're live now on YouTube and everywhere else that you could imagine. So again, Patrick from the Oilers Fanatic, Ryan Lotsberg, senior writer, heavy hockey, Dash in the Park from Heavy Hockey, my co-host, and myself, Oilers Live Wednesday night edition after 7-1 win over the Utah Hockey Club, the team that couldn't even get themselves a name yet. Right? I mean, that's what you get when you're just called the hockey club. How you guys feeling tonight? Everybody good?
Moods are always high after a 7-1 win.
Yeah. Can we find much to complain about after that showing?
I think if we try real hard, we can find something. I mean, it is Edmonton, right?
Depends if Draisaitl's injury is serious or not.
Yeah, there you go. I knew there was something.
Yeah, I saw the moment he went down, I figured something was wrong. He just didn't, the way he got up didn't look right. I think Bob took it for a quote of the night was he's got the pain threshold of a cadaver.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was thinking too when he came back. And I'd love to if I could play like Draisaitl's injured, that'd be awesome. Because man, that guy. Like, how tough is that guy? Unreal. I don't know what's wrong, and I guess we'll find out tomorrow, right? If he's back versus Winnipeg, but he had to go. I think, is the only disappointing thing about the game was that Draisaitl didn't get a point. Even the 50th would have been nice, but there was a point at which it just felt like they were trying too hard, though, right? Had to let it flow naturally.
Once the score got out of hand and Leon's on the ice, they're going to be trying to get it to him, right? So I think everybody in the building knew it was coming.
Yeah, and just couldn't get it to happen.
Leon had six more minutes of ice time than any other forward, I think, or something like that. Like, clearly they were trying to get. Yeah, it was like 5 minutes and 40 seconds more than McDavid.
And then Nugent Hopkins, 6 points in 2 games. Is he back? I mean, does he still have a shot at 100 points?
Yes and no.
At this pace, maybe he does. Let's start there because everybody loves a good Nugent Hopkins story when he's playing well. He certainly wasn't everybody's favorite player for a good part of this year. What's the difference? Lotzi, when you look at Nugent Hopkins over 2 games, is this just the case? Nuge said, hey, look, sometimes it just goes in. Sometimes, you're getting points on the board. Is that what it is? Or was there something different about his gameplay that you think gets him 6 points in 2 games?
I liked what he said. You just try to go out there and play the same way, and sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't, right? Like when you start trying to force things offensively, it just doesn't work for you. So I like his mentality. Yeah. He's right though. Over an 82 game season, you're gonna have cold streaks, you're gonna have hot streaks, and it looks like he's just getting a hot streak started here, and I'm hoping it lasts a good long time. And I'm hoping it leads to maybe not 2 points a night for 3 points a night for him, but some more consistent productivity would be huge because he's a super important player for this team. It's a whole different team when he's playing well.
Yeah, so you're basically getting the same vanilla answer that Nuge gave us then.
Just pretty much.
Goes, and sometimes it goes that way. Team game, pucks deep.
Well, what do you got?
I don't know. I think there's more to it than that. And I think honestly, I'm not gonna argue with Coach Knobloch on it. And I think he mentioned it after the game in his comments that when you get Nuge playing the center ice and he starts moving his feet, he's just a better contributor to the offensive play. It's a lot easier for him to carry his own line or push the river, if as Low Tide used to put it, when he's at the center ice position. I think, when you're on the wing with either Dryer or McDavid, they're generally the puck transporter. And now kind of Nuge can lean back into that puck transporter role and and flourish in it. So, I think I'd give it back to Lotzie because I'm being a little bit hard on him, but I think he also knows that there's been some chemistry with Arvidsson, and I think that's helped as well.
Patrick, you got Lotzie put out an article today about the nuclear option.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you had a chance to read it.
I didn't yet, but sorry.
Oh, wow. It is my first.
Yeah.
Anytime Lotzie puts out an article,
I will read it, Lotzie. I just didn't get a chance to yet.
All right. Well, I mean, the nuclear option, whether you agree with it or not. Good, by the way, good article, Lotzie. For those of you, go to heavyhockey.com. Latest article up by Ryan Lotsberg. This is like clearly a case, right? Like Nugent Hopkins is running his own line the last couple games. Is that, is it because he's not with McDavid and Draisaitl? Or, is it just, as Nuge said and Ryan said, is it just pucks going in? Or pucks, just bouncing the right way?
Sorry, you're asking me or asking Lotzie?
Asking you. Asking you, Patrick.
Sorry, it's his article, so I didn't want to start if he was done. Yeah, I think whenever Nuge wasn't on the when he was a winger, he was always put on the second line, and I think the third line center is just the perfect role for him because I think the second line center, there's a bit too much expected there. I think he can fit in there nicely, and as Dash was saying, like driving his own line there, some chemistry with Victor Arvidsson, and yeah, I think it's just the perfect spot for him. And just thinking back over Nuge's time, if there's anybody who can stay level-headed through up times and down times, it's Ryan Nugent Hopkins because he's been through it all here with the Edmonton Oilers. So I think keeping that confidence, and when he can score like he is now, it's great to see. I saw it firsthand last night. Just that beautiful backhand shorthanded goal was just incredible. And he looked like a different player on the ice the last couple of games. And yeah, I just think that third line center role, it's the ideal fit for him. I think second line center is too high, but third line center, he can play in the top six on the wing, but I think third line center is just ideal for him. And as you guys were saying, that chemistry with Victor Arvidsson definitely helping as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The Arvidsson piece. I mean, you got to think about that, like how that looks for Nuge but I look at this as it's 6 points, sure, in 2 games, but a couple of good bounces there. And also the first game was a really quiet 3 points, I thought, right? Like it wasn't, you could have watched that game and not realized Nuge had 3 points. Right. And sometimes that's good. So I think the answer is really somewhere in the middle. I don't know if we can be too excited about him running his own line yet, and we'll have to see how that works down the stretch. And I mean, we got to see if Knobloch believes in Skinner long enough to keep him in the lineup, right? To keep Nuge down at running his own line. So yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, we've seen now Skinner got a chance at the top line. How'd you guys feel about him looking there, Dash?
Yeah, and final thoughts on Nuge. I think like he's our Swiss Army knife, right? He's our guy that can do it all. He's one of the best penalty killers. He's one of the best power play merchants. He's one of the best 5-on-5 guys. He's one of our best defensive forwards. He can play wing. He can play center. Who knows? He can probably play E-bug if we asked him. Longest standing Oiler, all that stuff. I think his game, you said, like it was a really quiet game the other night. And I think that's important because kind of that is Nuge's game. He's like that silent assassin. And when you're the first star of the game, 2 games in a row, and the first one, they kind of didn't even really notice you. That says one thing. And I think the other thing is, getting a penalty kill, a goal on the penalty kill, a goal 5-on-5. Did he score on the power play? No, they didn't score on the power play, did they?
He got a couple of assists.
Yeah. So, just being a part of that. So I just think scoring in all types of ways. I guess it was the power play goal of the game before, right? So yeah, I think that is a whole brand new Nuge, and that's pretty cool to see. Skinner, quietly good. I don't know, sneaky good. I think I wrote on my game notes like sneaky good. He drew those first 2 penalties early in the game, and I think that helped set the momentum. Kind of had the puck going in Edmonton's favor before Nuge really turned the game on its head with that shorthanded goal. You could see that there was a little bit of lack of chemistry with McDavid. McDavid, you could see he was saying, no, don't dump it in. And a couple times where they were really chatting things out like that. But I thought he didn't hurt us.
No, he certainly didn't hurt the team. I think he adds a little bit more depth when he gets a chance up the lineup for sure. Patrick, I mean, you and I have talked about Skinner probably at length over the course of the season. Thoughts on him playing with McDavid, how he looked?
Yeah, I think he's creating things. He fits right in there. I mean, we got to have somebody there. I mean, maybe that's a thing when Trent Frederick we've talked about Evander Kane appearing in somewhere throughout the lineup, but maybe eventually in a top 6 role. We'll see how he looks when he comes back. But I think Trent Frederick's going to get tried up there, but until he's ready to go, I don't see any reason not to give Jeff Skinner a longer look here. And he certainly earned it. He's not racking up the points, but like I said, he's creating things, generating power plays for the team, and he doesn't look out of place. And I think he's worked on his defensive game. I think he knows what he has to do, kind of knows what he has to do to stay in the lineup, because it doesn't matter what he does. He does come out regardless. But yeah, I think he's a natural fit there. And I think that's really where, if the Edmonton Oilers are going to get the most out of Jeff Skinner, that's where he needs to be.
Yeah. Ryan, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Patrick in saying, like, if Skinner's going to succeed, I think that's the perfect spot for him on that. Somewhere in the top 6. It's clearly not working out super well with Draisaitl. We've seen little spurts of success with this line before. Like, it was the Calgary game at the very beginning of the season, back when Skinner had points on 2 of the team's 3 first goals of the year. He scored the only goal of the game in that game where Skinner was with McDavid and Hyman. And we haven't seen enough of them together to really get a good sense of just how good they can be. But some of the underlying numbers look good, and they generated a lot of chances last night. Now, is that just because of Skinner? No. McDavid played really well. Hyman played really well. But that's something I want to see take or get a longer look here.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, right? Like, you could put anybody in. We've had this discussion. Some would say no, you can't. But when McDavid's playing the way he's been playing the last few games, that's when you can put anybody there, right? Like, he's really dominating play. He's making the turns. He's doing all those things right. That Bouchard pass to him was the whole play was sublime, right? And it's typical McDavid going straight down the middle. What a great time to play Skinner on that top line with McDavid, right? When he's moving. We know that Skinner shoots the puck. That's not a problem. You need a guy that shoots the puck like that, right? And hey, last night was all about these guys doing everything that we wanted them to do all season long, right? Hyman there deflecting pucks in the net. McDavid getting the breakaway with the beauty goal. Nuge really looked like he was back to QBing the power play, right? We haven't seen that for a while.
Peak at home,
right?
Nurse fighting.
Yeah. Like, this is the team, with changes that we saw last year at the tail end of last year. The year, like, Hyman be back to 50 goals if he played like this all season. Granted, he's fighting injury most of the season at some point, but really great. Lotzie, let's talk about, you did an article today about the nuclear option. Timing's a little bit off because now the Oilers are back on the road, right? Road to recovery, let's say. And, they're looking good. We haven't seen the nuclear option in the last few games. I mean, outside of, obviously, after a penalty kill, they always put them out there. Give us a little bit of a rundown on it. And, take it over. I mean, what do you think? And I'm sure the three of us have some questions for you, but give us an idea of what you came up with.
Yeah, absolutely. So the premise for the article is actually one that I did a couple years ago, or November 2023, just trying to do a comparison and just see what the performance is like with them together, how each of them fares when they're apart. And the nuclear option really only works if there's a second scoring line, right? There's no point. I don't like loading all your eggs in one basket. And so that's part of my rationale as well. It's just trying to see if there's a second line that'll work. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is usually the guy that ends up playing second line center when Connor and Leon are together. So I looked at his numbers away from Connor and Leon as well, just to get a sense of how he performs. That's an indicator of whether we can put a second line together or not. So when I ran the numbers for this season, together, like Connor and Leon together this season are unbelievable. 66.81% expected goals for percentage. Actual goals are not far behind at 63.27%, 31-18. And even the Corsi 66.31%. Like it's, when all three metrics there are above 63%, you know you're playing well. Like that's unbelievable. You look at Connor and Leon's expected goal shares out like away from each other, they're both at about 55%, give or take a fraction of a percent there, which again, very good. They're each capable of more. We've seen them go higher than that on their own, but 55% is nothing to shake a stick at. And what the thing that jumps out though is the actual goal share. Leon's at 55%, pretty close to what's expected, but Connor is only at 43.08%. 5-on-5 goal share. He's been outscored 28-37 when he's on the ice away from Leon Draisaitl. That's a huge issue, right? So unless they can find another line, like, oh, I don't know, Skinner, McDavid, Hyman, that'll stop the bleeding, like we were seeing with the Nuge, Hyman, McDavid line, then leaving them together might just be a good play. And part of it is also, do you have a second line that works? Nuge's numbers away from Connor and Leon, pretty middling. They're all like, again, 51% or less, right? In that general range. Expected goals, 49.82%. Goals for, 51.61%. Pretty middling. But we've got more depth on this team this year. And there's some signs that Arvidsson and Nuge have a little bit of chemistry. Their goal share is 69.23% at 9-4. So it's a smaller sample size with a goal share that's well above expected. But expected goals is also right around 55%, 55.34. So if you leave those two together on a second line, I think there's enough evidence to support that they can contribute. And like looking at their DFF percentages on Puck IQ, they're both good against the elite and middle level competition. So I know they played third line together last game and it was good. But both of them have proven that they can do well higher in the lineup as well this season. So I think leaving them together is actually a really good option for this particular season. In the piece that I did in 2023, I noticed that the results were kind of in like to be determined, you know, like the word is escaping me right now, but it was middling, right? Putting them together wasn't necessarily always the best play, and sometimes having them together was the best play. It just depended on the season. So it really does depend on the season. And this season, the numbers are saying that the nuclear option is actually a really good option for them this year.
Thoughts, guys? I mean, this obviously, Patrick. I mean, you're gonna have to do your homework after the show, but no, Ryan just released the article right before we went on this evening, so we'll give you a break on that. But you know, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there because I don't think the nuclear option is on its own, right? There's so many other factors that you got to consider, right? Like we've talked about the trust that comes with the other players, right? When you're putting those guys together, there's certainly, it feels like anyway, there's a lack of trust with other players to get any offense done. That's when you see that option come together. There's the, there's no doubt, like if you put Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid on a line together, right, they're going to outperform the competition. That part's not surprising. I guess what we do need is we need a bigger sample size of Nuge and RV together. I mean, Arvidsson hasn't been like any type of a revelation, I think, for this team so far. But Dash, I mean, you were agreeing there's lots to unpack there. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great article, Lotzi. First things first. I think you kind of had me really thinking about it. I'm not like Josh from Tough Call that you've got me convinced, though. I know we butt heads on a lot of things, and this is going to be one of them. To me, it kind of, the stats don't lie, and I think you put them together well, and I can't dispute that. But it's almost like I read it thinking, well, they got 63% and, like 65% of the time this should work then, like we should almost be doing this all the time. And to me, I think like the more you kind of start peeling back the layers of the onions, is Michael was right. I hate to admit it, but there's a few it depenses in there. And I think it's, if you look at it like a flow chart, right? It's not like everything all dumps straight to nuclear and this is going to work almost every time. I think the flow chart has to go through, if you have somebody that can play right-handed center in the bottom six, if you have secondary scoring that's firing from the wings, if Nuge can carry his own line, then nuclear option is awesome. So you're not wrong, but I feel like it's still something that we've got to only go to when we need to. I don't hate how he does it after the penalty kill and on the power play, and that still gives them 10 minutes ice time together in a night or whatever, right? So the other thing I would debate you on in this one is you said that I can't remember what your word was, oozing center depth or have a plethora of center depth or something, and I challenge you on that, to maybe, not that we don't have the center depth, but maybe add a word to that sentence. We have a plethora of left-handed center depth. Because right now, like with, only Kapanen and Derek Ryan being able to take a right-handed draw, I do think that factors in sometimes. Kapanen's 35% and Derek's on a career trip at 60-some% or whatever. And who knows, maybe that's why we've seen him called up. I do think it's just because the cap doesn't matter almost anymore, but he was due back anyways. And look how they performed when Daddy was home.
There you go. Patrick, your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
You've been quiet tonight.
Well, I think they call it the nuclear option for a reason. You don't fire your nuclear weapons all the time, right? They should be a specialty weapon that you utilize at certain points in time. And yeah, some games it might make sense to throw them together for a game or two here, but I agree with Dash. They should really only be used power play after a penalty kill, the odd situation, maybe 4-on-4 where it kind of makes sense. But for the most part, like, and I'm just reading this, Ryan's stats here and stuff, and yeah, they certainly make sense and all that stuff. I agree with that, but I think I lean towards Dash's point of view there, where I'd prefer if they're both on their own lines the vast majority of the time and just put them together as a nuclear option when needed. I think this team is better having Nuge in a third line center role rather than a second line center role, as I was saying earlier in the episode. It's just, I think it gives the Oilers more depth there. So that's kind of where I see it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to see what happens when Frederick comes back, obviously. And that may change how utilization of Nuge is, but certainly right now, a couple games in, center line for Nuge looks pretty good. I mean, there's no doubt when you're playing third line too, you're who you're playing against as well has some effect on that, and it's clearly worked out for him. So that's good. I've got one thought here, and then we're gonna pass it over to Dash. Dash's got a couple of ideas in terms of new segments. One, we'll finish off with "Call Me Crazy" again today. I look at this team over even through the downswing. Stauffer talked about it the other day. It's he's talking about Skinner, and he said like the Oilers are in the market and probably over the offseason are going to look for an upgrade to back up Skinner. And one of the biggest challenges, of course, has been consistency, right? And so his consistency, where when he's on, he's on. And if the team's got, above average goaltending, they're going to win games. This is like last night to me was the perfect example of when the team wins. Like they came out flying, right? And, they played 12 minutes of probably some of their best hockey. But this team, I find every game that I watch, it's like that first 5, 6, 7 minutes of hockey, it's all Oilers. Like they come out hard and they come out fast, and they're, typically out shooting the opposition early, and then it goes down the other way. And that first, second, third shot by the opposition goes in the net. And you can almost see like everything deflate right at that point, right? But Pickard last night, hell of a game, right? Skinner's been playing well. I mean, to me, that's, we've talked about it a little bit, but this is a sign of a fragile team, right? If they can start to get some of these games, right, where the goaltending, is consistent just in the first period, like that, they just need to settle in that first period. And I think that makes all the difference in the world for this team. Like, is this team rattled by that? Like, do you think that what I'm saying right now is, have you noticed any of that? Like that first 10, 12, 15 minutes, and then the first goal in. Like for about a stretch of 10 games, I just expected the other team to score a goal first. Yeah. I mean, that's
Talbot
exactly
used to
it,
let in the first goal. Koskinen used to let in the first goal.
Talbot used to let in the first shot.
Skinner lets in the first goal all the time. Oh shit!
If Talbot made the first save, we knew we were going for a win.
Fill in the blank with every Oilers goalie since, really.
Yeah, part of the pregame warm-up.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be, right?
Like, does it rattle them? No, it's just part of their DNA. That's my answer.
You don't think it rattles them?
No, they're slow starters.
Lotsy?
I agree with your observation in the last, like ever since the Four Nations break, especially, like they might start playing some decent hockey actually, then something goes in and downhill it goes from there. Like when it rains, it pours with this team, right? Sometimes they get into this mentality where, yeah, they let simple things like that affect them, but then they'll go months at a time where they seem invincible, right? Nothing can face them. So it's just trying to stay in that positive mind space, which easier said than done. Like I'm not in the room, I'm not on the ice, I can't really contribute to that. And like even when you're on a team and your own mentality might be feeling really strong, really good, the team mentality is totally something else. It's just like an animal of its own that you can't really control sometimes. And so I think they fight that a little bit. And but yeah, it's only a sometimes thing. It's just when the team is playing bad in general. It's like, oh boy, here we go again. And then they dig the hole deeper.
Yeah, it's just like a fragility though around this team. Knobloch said it. Like, I want to know what's going on with this squad, right? That they go through these stretches, right? This is not the Oilers be Oilering like you're
yes, it
suggesting,
is.
Ash. I mean, this is
yes,
no,
it
I mean,
is. Of course, it is.
This is bullshit, right? Like who? Like no, it's not. I mean, you're going to tell me that they just come out and then the other team scores the first goal? I mean, I don't know.
For the better part of a decade. And they start seasons poorly, and they start after All-Star breaks poorly, and they start first periods poorly. Yes, it's their DNA, dude. This is Oilers be Oilering. Patrick, you didn't get to say. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree with both arguments a bit because, like, I agree with what Ryan was pointing out since the Four Nations. I think it's hurt them more with giving up the first goal, but you're also right in general, Dash. Like that is what they've done for years now. They have poor starts. They give up the first goal quite a bit. But I would say of late, the fragile thing comes in, like you were saying, Michael, that it does. They did seem like it was hurting them more. Like earlier in the season, before the Four Nations, they had the confidence to come back, but it seemed
second period, right?
like, and
Yeah.
we saw them like, well, what was it? The Avalanche game where they were down 3-0 and came all the way back and won 4-3. Like that clearly wasn't a fragile team. That was a team that dug down deep, got it done. And since the Four Nations, I guess the last few games, the exception, but yeah, I think they were playing well enough that even if Utah had got the first goal last night, I don't think it would have phased them as much. I think they're getting out of that fragile state. At least it appears that way. But yeah, you're right, Dash. It is in their DNA for a long time here as well, though. Yeah, they're a bad start team.
Yeah, I think we're having two different conversations. Like Dash is right about them starting slow in a lot of cases, and it's been that way for a lot of years. But it's the response that Michael's talking about, right? A lot of times they're strong enough to overcome it. But lately, and specifically when they're in losing streaks, other times as well, they're not responding the right way. They're letting it get them down, and the balloon deflates, and then things spiral.
I get that, and it's all related, but he asked if he thought it was in their heads. No, I don't think it's in their heads. I just think it's, well, sure, yeah, it's in their heads. It's the way their heads are wired.
Yeah, I mean, last night was the perfect example. Like, I feel like, you get those first couple saves by Pickard, and man, like this team's on, like they're on fire after that, right? Like if you can get through that, if this team can get through that first period with a couple good saves, like Pickard was outstanding. In fact, I think that's one of the storylines that hasn't been talked about last night, like a ton. Right, as Pickard played a hell of a game.
Let me ask you guys a question.
He was attacking a puck. He was.
It was mentioned in the Fanatic rundown. I would like to point out.
Was it good? Good.
Good on you, Patrick.
I did watch that.
Oh, but I'm getting crap for not reading an article. Okay, I see how that
watched
goes.
it.
Okay, but it's okay.
I saw it all live on location, and I watched, and I read Lotzie's article, so I get 2 gold stars on my forehead.
No one likes to brag your Dash.
You did touch on it there, yeah, I think for sure. But let me ask you guys a question: did the outside of, because I think this is the caveat, outside of the save that Skinner made when they were down, whatever it was, 2-1 or up 2-1, pardon me, to save the game. Other than that save, did the goalies really play that much better, or did the defense and the team play that much better in front of them? Which we all know kind of dictates how our goalies play. And I'll remind you, last night was the first time ever that we got to see Ekholm and Wallman in the lineup at the same time. This is the only time we've got to see our top 4 in the lineup for the first time.
I think they were doing an excellent job of clearing the rebounds last night, because I think Pickard was excellent, but he was giving up a lot of rebounds, but they were doing a great job of clearing them out in front of the net and not getting those second opportunities to Utah. So
yes.
Yeah.
And just to
the
pile
Rangers
on
game
top,
was different though.
Yeah, I would agree, Lotzie. Yeah, for sure. I think, and I'm going to let you go with that too. And I was going to say the exact same thing, and I don't know if it's the same thing we saw, but I was going to exactly say that to Patrick. It was different versus the Rangers, because I feel that. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Okay, go ahead, Lotzie. I'll come back to it. Sorry.
No, like there were lots of breakdowns in the Rangers game, and Skinner had to the big one on the power play where it kind of hit him on the side, but he was down and sprawling and made the big save. There was that one, but there were lots of other defensive breakdowns in that game too. There were lots of other times where the Rangers were pressing and had extended offensive zone time, and Skinner came up big.
I thought it came back to me. Sorry. I thought the biggest difference was versus the Rangers. They won, but the Rangers still had a lot of opportunities to come back in that game. And I thought that, from a goaltending perspective, our goaltenders do better when the game in front of them is predictable. When their shots are coming from predictable places, we're significantly better. And I think in the Rangers game, it wasn't quite there yet. Last night, very predictable for Pickard.
Mm-hmm.
Michael? You think it was goaltending or defense? Or just the,
Yeah, I
you know,
mean,
team game?
that's pretty easy analytics to say when it's predictable. I mean, any goalie come in, maybe even myself, if you know where it's coming from. Uh, I like I still I get down to if they can make that if they can come out and play that first period and be ready for the game, then it's all the difference in the world. And in every game that the Oilers have played in the last few, goaltending's come up big early, right? And that's what this team needs. They need to get through that first period. There's these second period comebacks aren't happening anymore. And people were expecting it. Being a rush by Edmonton and they're, this time of year everybody digs in a little bit harder, right? This is not, it's not like the beginning of the season where you can go we talk about the nuclear option and score a couple and get back in the game. That guys are playing harder. Every team's playing harder. They're all fighting for a playoff spot right now. Like I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. So that first part of the game, I thought Pickard was great. I didn't think it was defense related at all. I mean, I just thought Pickard came out and he was ready to play. He looked inspired. In fact, they've looked inspired for a couple of games. I don't know if they just kind of finally got mad and said we're not, both Skinner and Pickard have outperformed their colleagues on the other side of the ice, and it's been great.
Well, their dad was finally there to watch them. Derek Ryan. Ryan, what do you think? You think that the goaltending was outstandingly better or noticeably better or whatever syllable you want to use in there or synonym you want to use in there, pardon me, over the last two games?
Say in the Rangers game, yes. In the Utah game, I think Pickard was very good. Don't get me wrong, but that wasn't the reason that they won the game. Like they obviously had the big offensive outburst. Pickard did what he needed to do, and the quality of it, like the difficulty of his saves, wasn't as high as I think it was for Skinner in the Rangers game. Like Utah had a couple chances, but it was a pretty easy night for Pickard. But he did what he had to do and looked real good doing it.
Follow-up question for Patrick. You've had the bus gassed up to drive right over Pickard and get him out of town recently, all over the record, saying that you wanted a backup goalie to improve this team that can come in there with Skinner. And I just wondered if you felt guilty last night when you watched the game and you saw how well Pickard was playing, and you literally had the diesel fuel glugging from the can right into the bus.
No, I'm good. That wasn't really more an attack on Calvin Pickard. That was more the play of Stuart Skinner, really getting a more of a 1B goaltender. I think just
we got one.
Well, Bob Stauffer mentioned on Oilers Now the other day that the Oilers are looking for a 1B goaltender this summer. So there was obviously some validity to that argument if the Oilers are going to go for exactly that kind of target this summer.
Somebody in the chat said Pickard's better, so maybe who's the 1B? Like maybe that's replacement for Skinner. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Records said Pickard's better. So
I mean, Pickard obviously gets the easier starts, right? But it's I don't know. Like, what do the numbers say? He's 17-7, right?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean that's not terrible. I think given the easier competition, though. I mean that's maybe like playing against the Rangers versus playing against Utah is a bit different, right? Like there's no doubt about that. But Pickard's been consistent this year. I thought, like, if you don't, he doesn't come in and I've not been worried about him coming in as a backup. I think that the reason they want a 1B is because Skinner's not consistent, right? Like, I think that's the problem. Like, it's not about Pickard at all. It's just they need another Skinner.
So Pickard's, you just said it. He's 17-7. He's done everything he can do. Now you're talking out of the other side of your mouth, and all of a sudden he's not good enough to be a 1B.
No, that's not what I said at all. I said if you want a guy that can be put in against the Rangers, right? But you don't trust Pickard to be put in against the Rangers, so you put him in against Utah. And what the Oilers are looking for is when Skinner's not being Skinner, when he's playing as a below average goalie, that's when they want to throw their 1B in there, right? Instead, they can't play. They don't trust Pickard to play against the Rangers, right? And I think if you go back, I mean, we'd have to look, but if Pickard plays against better competition, I think he's probably, he's probably exposed a little bit.
Washington's pretty good.
Yeah, Washington's not
Played
too
against
bad.
Washington. Oh, no,
We're
they
0 for
didn't
2
win that.
against them, right?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
He didn't beat Washington.
Case in point.
Yeah.
Case in point. Right? Like I think that's what they're looking for. It's not that Pickard's not a good backup, solid backup, but they're looking for a guy that can do more than just backup. They're looking for a guy that can come in when Skinner's not being Skinner, right? Which we had a good stretch of recently, right?
Pickard ends up being the casualty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just the casualty in this situation because you don't want to give up on Skinner because he's 26 years old and he's taking you to Game 7 and all this and all that.
And
right?
you shouldn't,
but
right?
unless you're going to carry 3 goaltenders, which was an idea that I kind of floated, and I know Patrick was on board with as well. Carry 3 goaltenders and just use that third goalie to give both these guys a bit of a rest before the playoffs start, right? That's kind of what I was thinking. But yeah, if you're going to bring in a 1B, Pickard is unfortunately the casualty. Just the way it is.
Yeah, and I mean, like Calvin, it's never been an attack on Calvin Pickard. I think he's an excellent backup goaltender for spot duty, but I think what they're worried about is if Skinner goes into another rut, they have another guy that can take the ball for like 5 or 6 games. Like people have been saying, well, why not give Calvin Pickard a chance? And maybe he would succeed. I'm not saying he wouldn't, but I think it's more if you want to sit Skinner for a stretch of time, there's another guy that could take over there and be more of Skinner light rather than just. I think Calvin Pickard's strictly a backup, in my opinion, anyway. I think they're looking for like a slight downgrade on Stuart Skinner or maybe someone equal to that can maybe they split the season 41-41, something like that. And Calvin Pickard could be, because I think Colin Dealey is just on a 1-year deal, and Calvin Pickard could maybe play another year. He's got 1 more year left on his deal. He could maybe do another 1-year contract, but he's clearly not the future for this team. So if the Oilers could find another guy that can do it for the next few years with Stuart Skinner, that might be more of the play. And then Calvin Pickard could always go to Bakersfield and take over for Colin Delia, and maybe he goes something like that. But Calvin Pickard's been great. I don't want to knock on him, and I can see how you can see it as a knock as I am attacking him, but it's not intended as an attack on him. It's more just getting Stuart Skinner more of the help and until he can figure things out. But he's starting to look like is figuring things out. So I guess we'll see how it goes in the playoffs, but maybe they change their minds if Calvin Pickard blows everybody away and he gets an opportunity. But I think they do end up looking to upgrade that in the summer.
Now, Dash, I mean, you're on something though, which is well, we could just stop there. You're on. He's definitely on something, right, guys? Am I wrong? Am I wrong? No.
I'm on the train of always being right.
Yeah, you're on to one thing, which is you got Ekholm back in the lineup. Now you've got Wallman in there. You've got 5 pretty damn good D on this team now. I think we're going to see a different goaltending. We're going to see different goaltending because the shots are going to be more predictable. This is what I want to see, though. I mean, this is when we're going to, either the people that are out there that, absolutely think the Oilers can't win with Skinner, right? This is going to be the time. If the Oilers can't win with these 5D in the lineup consistently, assuming Ekholm is fully healthy and he's in the lineup, Wallman's been shot blocking machine and I think looking good. Nurse is looking good. I think they're all playing really well together. Putting Kulak down on third D pairing, like that's I love the fact that we can put him there, right? We're gonna see now, like if this goaltending is, maybe they're better than they look, right? To your point, maybe with some more predictable shots, they're better than they look. We're going to find out. This is probably the best stretch that we're going to have to see where the Oilers really are. And you might find that all that talk about a 1B goes out the window after the next upcoming stretch, right? Like it could, could very well be. And we've seen, last night was a good example. Ekholm's a difference maker out there. Fun to watch him, right? I mean, this D. I'm excited about the D. Yeah, some stranger says Wallman's playing goaltending as well. Right? Like Wallman's been good. I think Wallman had the worst numbers though last night. Did he not? He was if you look at the stats, it looked like his might have been out of like possession, everything like that, but he wasn't awful. Just a game like that, somebody's got to be down on the charts, and it was him last night. So
What'd you think of Vejmelka, Michael? You've been a big fan of his for a long time, and on that
yeah,
train
no, I know.
No, that's not. No, I'm serious. Like I didn't think he was that bad, actually. Like I think that that pull had more to do with playing 11 games in a row than it did anything.
Yeah,
else.
it was a little unfair to him. I mean, you got, but I've always liked Vejmelka. I mean, he's, that's a guy that comes out and plays. Doesn't matter who's in front of him, and still plays consistently night after night. Well,
I think he started 13 of 14, and he's been the first star in 4 or 5 of those games in the last 14 games. So
all I know is he's off my radar. He's never
well, he's extended now, anyways. But
yeah. So I hate him. That's what I think about him. I hate him. I hope he loses, and he did
first.
Yeah. All right. We got about 45 minutes left. Dash put some requests out to the guys here tonight. So Dash, take it away. What do you got on your?
Yeah, I gave you guys some homework, and I think it's talking about the future a little bit, and maybe it's too soon, and there's a lot of it depends. But ultimately, I think it starts talking about a lot of the different ways that we see the team and the chemistry and why we would put certain people in certain situations. At first, I kind of figured we would just kind of all have pretty much the same lineup, and it would be a useless exercise, but it wasn't. I think it's quite different. So for the listeners, what I asked each one of the guys to do is to send me what their ideal best case scenario lineup is for game 1 of the playoffs for this team. All right. So I'm not going to read you off 4 different guys' lines because that'll be me saying somebody's name 50 times in a row and you'll all go to sleep. But what I've done is I've kind of laid them all out side by side, and I think there's some interesting things here. And so I'll kind of use the comparisons and the differences to try to figure out why. So similarities on the defense is we've all got the top 4, exactly how it was last night. And as well, I think this will be kind of a fun exercise to go through in another 12 games and see how much we've changed our minds and why. So a little bit of a setup or a tease for down the road here. So no surprise, we all had the top 4 the same, but from there it came considerably different. Well, in fact, we all had the top 5 the same. So Kulak in the 5th spot. I thought it was interesting that Michael had Klingberg in the 6th spot and on that 3rd pairing D, and none of the rest of us even had Klingberg in our top 7. So that was a big differentiator, as well as only 2 of us had Emberson, and that was Ryan and Patrick. I actually had Stetcher in as the number 60 and then Emberson in as the 7th. So we're all rotating the same 3 players, except Michael had Klingberg in a lot higher. So why did you have Klingberg in the top 6, Michael? Why did you think that he was best suited in the number 3 pairing for the first game of the playoffs?
I don't know if I didn't read your question right. I read it. Yeah. I just read it as what you thought what I thought the starting lineup would be, meaning what did I think Knobloch would probably come up with.
Okay,
my ideal line might be a little bit different, but I'd probably still put Klingberg in there. He was looking like he was going to get it together. It depends on what the injury is and how long it keeps him out. If he's back, I think he's got enough skill and you can't deny his experience in the league, right? And you going into the playoffs, I think you need that over say Stetcher or Emberson, but that's just kind of the way I look at it. Like I probably wouldn't change that. And I don't think, especially somebody like Knobloch is going to discount the experience that he could bring to the team when it matters.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ryan and Patrick both had Stetcher in as their seventh defenseman, and I had him in as the sixth with Kulak, and I think it's just for me a little bit more battle tested. Emberson played 30 some games last year, and kind of falling off a little bit at the end of this year. I just hope he isn't one of those college players that just he's never played 80 games plus the rigorous schedule and we're kind of seeing that a little bit. So for me, it was like, let's let Emberson sit until there's an injury. I can see the flip side or the bad side to that being is that I think Emberson's a better penalty killer than Stetcher, but Stetcher has more offensive upside. Ryan, Patrick, you guys both had Emberson sit beside Kulak for the third pairing and number 6D. Ryan, why did you have Emberson in there?
Big thing for me was the familiarity with Knobloch and his defense first mentality. Like, we don't have a lot of guys that are like true shutdown oriented guys, and Emberson is that. And he's had Knobloch's trust all season long. He's operated as the number 6 all season long. I don't see a reason for that to change going into game 1 of the playoffs. Now, I'm going to acknowledge that, yes, I agree he's fallen off a little bit recently, and your fear of him being overtired is very real. Having said that, though, I feel very comfortable with both Stetcher and Klingberg waiting in the wings if Emberson starts to struggle. So I'll start Emberson, but keep the leash short.
That's fair. Patrick?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of Ryan's points there. And also, I think Emberson's one of the future guys here for the Edmonton Oilers. So I think I really want to see, and I'm sure what the Oilers want to see, what he can do in that third pairing role, because they've been talking about, they still haven't got to it, getting it done yet, but they're doing an extension and having him as part of the top 6 going forward here. So I think you want to give the kid a chance. And like Ryan said, Knobloch's trusted him all year long. And if he is tired, Klingberg and Stetcher are there. But I think come game 1, we're going to see him in that third pairing with Kulak.
Cool. Great point there on the future and keeping somebody in the core. I think that was well put. All right. So in order to kind of break down the forwards, let's start at the top line. Michael and I both had old reliable Nuge, McDavid, Hyman on our top line. For me, I think it's a battle tested line. They know each other well. They know how to perform well together. It's been potentially or arguably one of the best lines in the NHL over the last 2 years. Ryan, of course, after just writing the article that he did, not a surprise whatsoever, has the nuclear option as his first line with Hyman.
I had the launch code from that guy.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we got 3 sets of keys. Ryan's got Nuge as a second line center, just as a backup bit information there. And Patrick uniquely had Frederick up on the top line with Hyman and McDavid. So maybe let's start right there, Patrick. Why do you have Frederick up on the top line? What was your thoughts in doing that?
Well, I've mentioned for the last couple episodes, I think Frederick could come in and have kind of a Pat Maroon type effect with Connor McDavid, and it gives the Oilers some size playing with McDavid and Hyman. Frederick over the last couple seasons, not so much this year, obviously, but over the last couple of years in Boston shows he has some offensive ability. And I think if anybody can bring that out in him more, it's probably Connor McDavid. So I like McDavid and Hyman together. So I wanted to keep those 2 guys for sure. But I think Trent Frederick is going to get tried somewhere in the top 6, maybe not with Connor McDavid, could be with Draisaitl, but I think Frederick, McDavid, Hyman could be an interesting line. We could be proved before then, depending on when Frederick comes back, that it doesn't work at all, but I think it's an interesting option.
All right, I'm going to go back up to Michael with this because you've admitted to us now that even after scalding Patrick publicly for not reading an article, you are now admitting that you don't know how to read instructions. So awkward pause. Mm-hmm. So would you have Nuge up on the top line? Is that, you said this is more what you thought Knobloch would do instead of what you think the ideal situation is? Start there.
Yeah. I want to see more of what we saw last night, right? And if we did, if we saw a lot of what was happening last night, I'd probably put Skinner up there on the top line. Because he shoots the puck, he skates around the offensive zone like like he's mad, and he's getting in there. And if Hyman's back and sitting in front of the net like he was last night, and you got both McDavid and Skinner, getting the puck on the net, a lot of those are going to go in off of Hyman, right? And so I'd put Skinner up there. But I just honestly don't. I think that a few games doesn't make Knobloch a believer in Skinner, so I just don't think it's going to happen. And look, if ideal was either way, I'd either have Nuge or Skinner up there. Nobody else and yeah, I 100% agree. You got to keep McDavid and Hyman together. But I'd love to see Skinner like firing it on all cylinders and up there on the top line so that we could utilize Nuge someplace else. Probably on the third line.
Yep. All fair. Ryan, you've talked about this already at length when you went through the article, so I'm sure you don't need to repeat everything you said there, but anything else that pops into your head as to why you'd want to go, nuclear here and Skinner down on the second line?
Just admit you're wrong, Ryan. Just kidding. No.
Yeah, I don't need to add a whole bunch to the article, which is on heavyhockey.com if you want to go check it out. But I'll say that McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman is the best possible line that we could put together. I'll leave it at that, and I'll explain the rest of my lineup as we go here.
Yeah, nope, that sounds good. What I also like about having Nuge up on the top line on left wing and then having Draisaitl in the second line slot is you can always just swap those two guys out if you need, right? And then it doesn't really stir up any of the other lineup. Nuge can go down into the second C spot like Ryan has suggested, and then Dry goes up for the nuclear option. All right, on the second lines, I had it how Jeff Jackson drew it up. Skinner and RV on each side of Draisaitl. Michael liked Podkolzin and Kane up there. Ryan had Skinner with Arvidsson and RV. I think he's going to get into that. Patrick as well had Leo on the setting of the second line, and he also had Kane on that line, just like Michael did, but Kane and Skinner. So where do we start here? Let's go with the guys that had Kane on the second line. Michael, what makes you think a guy that's been out for almost 2 years, suffered 3 major core injuries, is going to be able to step in to the lineup in the playoffs and fill a second line role like Evander Kane?
Draisaitl is what makes me think that. And that's it, right? I mean, you've got Kane coming in. You're going to need to stir him right away. And no better guy to get that done than Draisaitl. And we know Draisaitl, he runs the line. He doesn't need. We played with Arvidsson and Podkolzin all season long and still is putting up 100 points and going to make 50 goals, right? So, I feel comfortable putting Kane there. And if it sparks Kane for the playoffs, then hell yeah. I mean, that's like, if you could get Kane going, this team might be unstoppable. And that's why I'd put Kane there. Whether I put Podkolzin there, I don't know. I was looking at the lineup and, having thought that this is what Knobloch's going to do. I took Skinner out of the lineup, so I'd probably change that up a little bit, but Kane for sure, I think, with Draisaitl just to get him going.
And I think Draisaitl, like those guys that can go and battle and be dogs on a bone like Yamo and Podkolzin's kind of one of those players. That's why I have Arvidsson on his right wing. I had Skinner ideally there. He's got a good guy that can have a high puck IQ playing with him. Patrick, back to you. You had Kane on the second line with Draisaitl. Go ahead.
I think it's important to try and get Evander Kane going as quickly as possible, as I think Michael noted there as well. And just as I was putting the rest of my lineup together, I just felt like that was the best possible spot for him. Probably more likely he would start down, but I think why not Chris Knobloch? I mean, you try him there for game 1, game 2. He looks horrible. You can always shake things up. He shakes things up if he wants about every 10 minutes anyway. So starting it out there for the first couple shifts, see if Kane can get it going there. I'm sure he'll go for a little conditioning stint in Bakersfield or something before he goes back. And Jeff Skinner playing with those guys, I think Jeff Skinner belongs in the top 6 role. And I thought about putting Skinner with McDavid and Hyman, but I just have it in my head that Trent Frederick, Connor McDavid combination could be something special. That's why I moved Skinner down there. And yeah, like I said, let's try and get Evander Kane going as quickly as possible. Might not work out, might have to move him down, but it's the playoffs. You got to get things going as quickly as you can. So
Frederick's the big question mark, right?
Yeah.
Like, where does he end up? I mean, you might be right. If he plays with McDavid and he's any good, that could be killer too, right? Like that's I would love to. I hope that when he comes back that we get to see a couple of games of McDavid and Frederick before playoffs hit, because he might be onto something. They might have instant chemistry, and Frederick plays a good game. So
Yeah, I do think Frederick's the wild card. Good point, Michael. I think, the more I look at Patrick's lineup, I really kind of started to like it the most, to be honest. Having Frederick in a spot like that, we've seen Connor McDavid do well with banging wingers. He personally admitted, and as a junior when he was at Erie, that Milan Lucic would be his ideal winger. He ended up with Evander Kane and did really well with him at times. We know what he did with Patrick Maroon. Hyman isn't, a tough and mean player, but he's a big guy, and the way he plays certainly is tough. And I think that's why he does well with him. So yeah, seeing somebody, like a Trent Frederick at 6'3", 225, that'll drop him with anybody that gets anywhere near McDavid, just like Semenko did with Gretzky, would be pretty cool to see. I'm not going to lie. I'm also going to use that as a transition. I had Frederick in my third line center role. So let's talk about our third lines. And I think before we talk about our third lines, we kind of have to skip ahead and talk about our fourth lines. Every single one of us outside of Patrick had last year's third line that was pretty much a marvel in the fourth line slot this year. So we're talking about Rico, Brown, Janmark. Really did well in the third line role last year. Myself, Michael, and Lotzi all had them as the fourth line. Patrick wasn't far off. Rico, Janmark, Perry. So let's maybe talk about Patrick. You're kind of the only one that had Perry that far down the lineup. Why did you have Perry on the fourth line with Rico and Janmark?
why do you hate Perry so much?
No. Patrick does not hate Perry so much. Patrick hates Connor Brown. It is the next bus he has fueled up. He didn't even have Connor Brown in like his top 14 forwards.
Pickard, Perry, and Brown all on the bus. Let's go. Yeah.
So good point, Michael. But Patrick, what do you have to say about this?
Well, I think Corey Perry's had an excellent year, and he deserves the spot way more than Connor Brown does at this point. Connor Brown hasn't been terrible, but Corey Perry's delivered throughout. I think he's a proven playoff performer. He didn't do as much. I think he got hurt against LA last year, so we probably didn't see the best from Corey Perry in the playoffs last year, but I think he's more of a proven playoff performer. And yeah, I just think he's done more. I think he's more deserving of that fourth line right wing spot than Connor Brown is at this point.
I agree with you in terms of the fact that I think Perry's not only on the fourth line spot, I think he's earned it up higher in the lineup in the top 9 somewhere because of his play. And then I'm sure the rest of us all have that, Rico, Janmark, Brown line together because it works well together. It did in the playoffs. It did as a third line. Why wouldn't it as a fourth line? So we say that on our fourth to get back to our third. I love my third line. I would hate to play against my third line. And what I did there is because I have Skinner and Arvidsson and Jeff Jackson's second line there, I put Perry on I put Frederick in between Perry and Kane. Now that is a tough third line. That is a banging third line. That is going to make every defense pair in the entire playoffs look over their shoulder if those guys are trucking in. There's a big if. I think RV and Skinner both have to work on the second line for this to happen. Ryan, you had Podkolzin, Perry, and Frederick. So you agreed with me at Frederick being the third line center. What were your thoughts on having Podkolzin and Perry on each side of him?
Yeah, I wanted to get Perry up off the fourth line, and I didn't quite want to put him in the top six. The third line right wing looks really good there. I think having a third line that can produce some offense is vital. It's vital. And I think Perry's doing it this year for sure. And Trent Frederick, I'm not looking at last season or 2 seasons ago with Trent Frederick. I'm looking at this season where his offensive production at 5-on-5 has been basically cut in half of what it was last year. And he was a borderline top six forward last year when he peaked, in my opinion. So I like him as the third line center for sure. And Podkolzin down there, similar to your idea with Kane, like Podkolzin brings the physicality and the forecheck. Like all three of those guys are going to be a pain in the butt to play against. So I just think that's going to be a really effective third line that'll actually produce a little bit.
Michael, you obviously felt similar. You had Frederick and the third line center as well. You also had Perry right beside him, but you had Arvidsson on the right.
Yeah, I mean, I took Skinner out of my lineup because I don't think Knobloch will have him in for the first game. But if Skinner's there, if he proves himself, maybe he wins Knobloch over before then, that changes everything considerably. I love the idea of putting Perry, Frederick, and Kane out there. I also think, to your point, Ryan, that that you were saying about Frederick having a career season last year, right? Like, Ryan's talking about that last year, and if he's on a third line with Kane and Perry, and you've got two really good lines going up, I mean, who are they playing against? I mean, that could be just the line that cashes in because everybody else is too freaking tired to do anything against them, right? And yet, yeah, like, I love the idea. I mean, Kane, that could be where Kane gets his spark. Maybe it's not from Draisaitl, but if Frederick gets in there and does anything worthwhile, that'd be great.
Well, the last thing in this exercise that was kind of fun was every single one of us had a different 13th forward. Now, again, maybe this is skewed because Michael didn't read the instructions, but I thought it was interesting on a few accounts. Patrick's had Max Jones in there, which, I think he's earned a spot at least, at some point in time in the playoffs. And that's where you'd have him there, 13th forward, kind of first guy in, the physicality, the size, all of that stuff. I get it. For Ryan, it was Evander Kane, which I thought was an interesting decision to not have Patrick Kane in your top 12. Sorry, I keep doing that. Evander Kane in your top 12 to start the playoffs. And one of the conditions of this exercise was that Kane was ready and healthy. So he's going to have to explain that. Michael had Kapanen in there, which I thought was very surprising because I think he'd be considerably down my lineup as far as extra forwards go. But then maybe you guys would agree with me. Call me crazy, but I think Derek Ryan is going to be the 13th forward, and it's plain and simple right here. He's a very, very, very good right-handed centerman, and we don't have any right-handed centers. What are we going to do on every single face-off on that side of the ice? Kapanen can do it, but he's 35% on the year. So back to Michael. Kapanen, interesting choice. Why would you have Kapanen in as your 13th forward?
Yeah, I mean, I had Kapanen / Skinner.
I didn't give you two. I gave you one.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to have, I'd have Skinner in there before I had Kapanen, as the 13th, assuming he's out. They're not going to, Kapanen's, once everybody's back, he's somebody is easy to expend, right? Like it's, he's had some good speed, and that's about all he's brought to this team. And he's been a good fill-in. It was a good waiver pickup, but that's about it. Nobody's been really super excited about having Kapanen on the team, except for Kapanen. He's been pretty obvious. So I'd have Skinner as my 13th guy, and I would, face-offs are great. I don't think they, over the grand scheme of things, I don't think it will change and rise or fall the success of the Oilers. So I just don't think Derek Ryan's gonna be in.
Yeah, I mean the advantage there if Ryan slots in is I think he can just take right-handed face-offs and pay the penalty kill, get his 5 minutes in, and it's kind of all we'd need him for, I think. Over to Ryan. Evander Kane out of the top 12. Now, is that because you agree with Bob, the goalie, in the chat, who's back? His restraining order is back intact, and he is not allowed on the show tonight after getting 2 very costly penalties in the heavy hockey showdown. We've suspended him for at least one show. Kane in the bottom 6 is an unmotivated Kane, Bob the goalie says. We've seen him play almost sulky-like outside of the top 6. Is that why you got him as the 13th forward, Ryan? Because you just couldn't put him in the top 6?
Not necessarily. I don't feel comfortable putting him in the top 6 right now because I don't know how he's going to move. Right? I'm on record as saying that I don't think he's going to skate the same way he used to coming off of this surgery, and it's going to take him some time to get back to that level if he ever gets back to that level because he's 32, I believe 32 years old. Right? He's at that stage where the decline is inevitable, and I think we've already started to see it happen. It came down to who can I take out of the lineup in place of Kane, right? There are a couple options I looked at. Janmark was one. He's not scoring a whole bunch. He was putting up some assists at the start of the season, but that has dried up. But he's a penalty killer. Yeah, the PK hasn't been as good as normal, but our 2 PK pairs seem to be Nuge and Rico, and then Janmark and Brown. And we saw what that foursome did in the playoffs last year. I know Ryan McLeod, Warren Fogle were part of that. Derek Ryan was a part of that as well. But those 4 mainstays are kind of pretty consistently big players in the tops, or in the penalty kill is what I'm trying to say. So I didn't want to take any of those guys out of the lineup. The other guy was Vasily Podkolzin, and he's earned the coach's trust, like a good, responsible defensively, and he brings the physicality that Kane brings, and he's faster. So I didn't really feel comfortable taking anybody out of the lineup for Kane. If I was to play Kane, I was thinking a 4th line spot would be a good spot for him to start. But my 4th line with Janmark, Rico, and Brown, it's 2 of my penalty killers there, and they had good chemistry or 3 of the penalty killers on that line. They had good chemistry with Henrique in the playoffs last year. I think that's a legitimate 4th line. So I think someone else is going to have to play their way out of the lineup for Kane to get a spot in it if it's me.
Fair enough. I guess there's an element of dance with the ones that got you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like these guys have fought hard for 82 games to get where they are, and then you got Kane, who, yeah, I mean, all things being equal, is a better hockey player than most of the guys on that roster, but there's something to be said for exactly how you put it.
That said, you could say the same thing about got you there. Frederick, but he's too damn good to keep out of the lineup. Now, Patrick was just rolling his eyes, so he either had a cat hair in his eye, or he grossly did not agree with something you just said, Patrick. What was it? The first or the?
I didn't agree with I didn't agree with the whole fighting all year line. I haven't seen a fight from all 3 of those guys all year.
Dance with the one that got you there.
I think we've been talking about we need more from Henrique, Brown, and Mark a lot of nights. I mean, yes, they've been okay, but I wouldn't say they've been our best players all year long either.
And that's why I'm happy with them on the 4th line.
Yeah.
If that's my 3rd line, I'm less happy with it.
Yeah.
Well, look,
and that's what I thought they were going to be
from Brown this year. I mean, this is is Brown's new MO that he's a playoff guy. Like I worry about situations like this. Like, which Brown are we going to get? We've seen it once that he was good, like one season in the playoffs. It's a lot to ask. I mean, Hyman scored 50 last year. He's not going to score 50 again, right? Brown was fantastic during the playoffs last year. Is he going to be fantastic during the playoffs this year?
Yeah. Thing I'd say to a lot of
also keep in mind that these are lines for game 1. right?
Yeah.
I believe game one of last year's playoffs, Henrique was on the top line with McDavid and Hyman. Right? It's a long run over 2 months. Well, we hope it's a long run over 2 months. Things can change.
The thing
do we have the lineup for how can we find that? Where would you even find that info?
Let me look here. I'm sure I can find it. Game
All right.
one last year.
Yeah. I'm curious. This is good little thing.
You can go to you can easily just go to the game log or whatever from
natural stat
from
trick.
that or whatever, ESPN anywhere. The thing I would challenge Lotzie on a little bit there, I think, is that I've heard you say this. I've heard you put it in our private chat over and over again that you don't trust Kane skating. Here's a statement just for you, Lotzie. Call me crazy, but I don't give a crap whether he can skate or not. I don't, because it doesn't matter if he's going to play in a kind of effective role. He's not going to be with somebody carrying the puck, or he's going to be paired with somebody carrying the puck. He's not going to be asked to be carrying the puck. Ultimately, go stand in front of the net, throw elbows, throw cross checks, be intimidating, scare the crap out of people when they do stupid crap after the whistle, punch them in the face. And when you have the opportunity to bang home a few rebounds, do that. I think Kane could be really effective by quite literally limping down the ice with one leg and then just going and standing in the blue paint. I don't need him to skate. Call me crazy.
I will call you crazy because a lot of what makes him effective is actually getting in the forecheck and hitting. Right? If you can't skate, you're not getting there in time to lay hits. And if you are, you're just taking penalties. Right? If you're there a fraction of a second slower, you're taking a penalty. And that's the other downside to having Kane in your lineup, especially if you're asking him to play that annoying role, because he takes dumb penalties a lot. Right. So a lot of things he does kind of neutralizes the annoying players on the other team. But if he's just going to be taking up space and taking dumb penalties, I'm not interested.
I still think that there's an effect in his game, even if he can't dump and chase and bang D and get there on time. Like I said, I take that out of his game. That's fine. Yeah, that does take a tool out of his toolbox. But all I need him to do is go in front of the net, cause havoc, cause intimidation, and be there just in case. I don't know. You guys want in on this? I was going to do it just for Lotzie, but Michael, you've been nodding your head a lot. Call me crazy, but I think Vander Kane doesn't need to skate.
Well, then you better have somebody that skates on his line.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're right, like if Vander Kane's doing some of the things, like Kane's game can be, when he's on the top of his game, can be multifaceted. He can be, a guy to mix it up. He can be a goal scorer when he's playing. I mean, we've seen him make some amazing plays. He's, can be a bump and grind kind of guy. Like, but I think, like, if you put him with Frederick and Perry, well, you better be skating, because I mean, Perry is not your guy, right?
Good point. Yep.
Yeah. So it depends on utilization.
Good point. Before I get to Patrick, I want to read the McDowell statement that just came, or the text that just came in. Kane looked pretty damn good shutting down to Tkachuk when he was on Calgary. And don't one of you even say for a second, well, that was 2 years ago. That was before the injury. Doesn't matter. You know how he shut Tkachuk down? One sentence. I don't even know if any of us know what it is. But when Tkachuk gave Kane the money sign, talking about his gambling, whatever Evander Kane said back to him, shut Tkachuk down for the rest of that series. He was absolutely invisible for the rest of that series after that verbal altercation.
Okay, so everyone we play against has someone as soft as Tkachuk
that just won a cup. Yeah, it's a tough one. Patrick, call me crazy,
but he throw his hat. But
well, yeah, maybe that's right. But hey, Patrick, I mean, call me crazy. He can just beat you with his words. He doesn't need to skate.
Well, I remember the Heritage Classic when they were playing the Flames and they were all coming in on, and he does that line, "What are any of you gonna do?" And what are any of you going to do? And yeah, he can have that intimidation factor. And that's kind of like why I gave him that top 6 spot with Leon Draisaitl, because I think Draisaitl and Skinner could be going, and then Kane can just kind of fit right in there and get his game going as well. I was going to mention, though, with that trio you guys had together, Frederic, Kane, and Perry, I think of that kind of like, I'm not saying it wouldn't be a good line. It would probably could be a good line, but I think of that kind of like the nuclear option. You're putting all of your eggs in one basket. I like it better if the physicality spread throughout the lineup. I mean, that would definitely be one intimidating line, but that's kind of why I put like Frederic on one line, Perry on one line, just to spread it throughout the lineup. So you don't have that one line can definitely like maybe do it like the power play, like the penalty kill. Oh man, the Oilers look a little sleepy tonight. Okay, put those three guys together, get a shift going or something. But consistently, I wouldn't keep those three guys together. I think it's better to spread it throughout the lineup.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair. All right, Bob's clearly broken through his restraining order again. I don't know how he keeps getting in with these texts. We have him blocked, but he did say, Dash, this take is about as crazy as the Flames believing they'll ever get in and win a cup again. Well, that's a pretty decent segue for a guy that's not even on the show, Bob, because I was going to say, call me crazy, but I want Calgary getting that last playoff spot, you guys. I just feel like it's better for hockey if we end up seeing them somehow. I don't know. I just hate Vancouver that much. Michael, call me crazy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I would love to see an Edmonton Calgary series again. But if that's not in the cards, then I'm happy watching Calgary sit on the sidelines and watch playoffs from the outside. And I'd even be happier if they were the only Canadian team not to do it, because that's a hell of a chirp, right? Like this, Flames fans, they're the only Canadian team that couldn't make the playoffs. And it's looking like a very real possibility with the way Montreal is playing of late.
Yep.
But I would love, it's not going to happen because Minnesota, that whole Central Division's too high up there. So either Vancouver or Calgary isn't making it. Either way, one of them might be the only Canadian team not in the playoffs this year. And that's kind of sweet. I hate them both equally.
Yeah. I'd love to see a second round matchup versus the Flames somehow. Just a little bit of a salt in the wound for history wise. I don't know, lots. You call me crazy, but I'd love to see the Flames in the playoffs.
That's a tough one. It's the Flames. I don't want to cheer for their success, but they're kind of the most, aside from Utah, I think they're the most intriguing storyline that could come out of that or come into that final wildcard spot. Yeah, they're the underdog. I wasn't expecting to be anywhere close to where they are, and yet here they are. It'd be funny if Vancouver missed, like, just based on their season last year and what's gone on this year.
Yeah.
St. Louis is kind of that team that's stuck in the middle. They should go the other way, but they don't want to, so they're stuck in mediocrity. But Utah is the other exciting one, and I'm surprised they didn't do more at the deadline with the way their ownership wants to be aggressive. And first year in a new city, I thought they'd be more aggressive at the deadline, but here we are. So,
Patrick, ignore Bob's comment and call me crazy.
I'm not going to call you crazy. I'd rather have the Flames in than the Canucks, and that's because I have recency Canucks bias. I just hate that team right now, and I cherish every moment that they struggle in. And to see them miss the playoffs, I'd be thrilled with that, and the Flames can make it just so we can beat them again.
And Calgary's got fewer fans, and they're not as weird. And,
and Battle of Alberta is better for hockey.
Here, this is a little bit off our track. If either Calgary or Montreal makes it into the playoffs, do they have the Calder winner?
Yep.
I mean, Lane Hudson's leading the rookie class in points as a defenseman. I think that's incredible.
The favorite right now, though, right? Like, he's the odds-on favorite. Is it what everybody's talking about?
Wolf's my pick.
Yeah.
But if Calgary makes it, I mean, Wolf's got to have a pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's just hard for a goaltender to win. Same thing with the Hart. It's just hard for a goalie to win. I'd go Hudson right now, honestly.
Yeah. I think it'll
So-
come down to which of the two of them make it into the playoffs. I think if either of them make it into the playoffs, that's who our Calder winner will play for. If they both get in, then maybe it's a tougher decision. But
Yeah, maybe. Okay, I got one more. We got 4 minutes left. We can be quick, but we can also use this as a transition. Throw a prediction for the game against Winnipeg, and along with your response. I think, Ryan, you were sitting right beside me when I said it on the hangout. I think 2-2 on this homestand looks very different if we beat Utah and whoever the other team is that I'm brain farting on right now, Seattle, and we don't beat Dallas and Winnipeg. I think at this point in time, if we beat Seattle and one of the other two, 3-1's a success. 4-0 is obviously a success. That all said, I think the way that we've been playing lately, sure, we're on a 3-game win streak, but it maybe hasn't looked great. I think, the Rangers kind of handed us that game a little bit. Utah certainly handed us that game a little bit. Give a prediction at the end of it. I'm going to say this. I think this is maybe the biggest must-win game for the Oilers all season against the Winnipeg Jets. Call me crazy, Michael.
yeah, I mean, I just think you're crazy for calling it a must-win at this point. I don't see it as a must-win, but outside of that, I mean, it's an important game for this team to sort of gauge where they're really at, right? I mean, you had some easy wins. Can you beat a good team? And if they can, then yeah, that's. I think it's just important for if they win, if they lose, it'll matter how they lose, right? But yeah, it's an important game. There's no doubt. I mean, they have to show up against a good team. They got to beat a good team. We know that. Anybody could beat Utah on any night, but not anybody can beat Winnipeg. And if this team thinks of themselves as a true cup contender, then this is an important game.
Yeah, I
just
think
from a yeah.
Yep. If you lose, how you lose is important. I think that's a really good point. What's your prediction?
I kind of think the Oilers are going to lose. I mean, Winnipeg's really good right now, and you come off of a 7-1 game. I feel it feels like a 3-2 Winnipeg game for me.
Okay. I think it's a must win. I think it's for the confidence alone. I just think that if they get beat in any fashion, everybody's going to be like, see, they can't beat good teams. They can only beat teams on the bottom half and teams that didn't make the playoffs last year, because there are stats to back that up. Patrick, let's go to you next. Call me crazy, but I think it's a must win.
I think it's a must win for that measuring stick that you just mentioned, that they have to keep this going. They have to prove something. It's not a must win in that if they lose it, anything's going to happen, but it's a must win in the fact that I think it's time for this team to step up with how they've struggled through this last bit and the Four Nations fall off. And I think it's time for this team to make a statement. And in the regards of making a statement, I think this needs to be a statement win for this team. And I'm going to say 4-3 Oilers. They get it done.
I'm thrilled you said it that way. This needs to be a statement game, because before I go to Lotsie, I want to say exactly that. I think the Jets want to make a statement. I think the Jets are going to use this as a statement game. This is the team that everybody thinks has the best chance to win the Stanley Cup in the West, right after they, had a hell of a season. And you guys are going to give the odds to the Oilers? We'll show you. Right? So I don't know. I think the Jets are going to absolutely bring it. Not to mention they just got spanked by the Canucks, which is embarrassing for anybody. So they're going to come in with a bad taste in their mouth. Lotsie, I think the Oilers have to beat them, or we're going to get beat bad. Call me crazy, but it's a must win.
I'm gonna call you crazy, mostly because I enjoy doing it, and I'm gonna catch you on the technicality of the must-win language. I agree that it's a game with elevated importance because it is a measuring stick game. Winnipeg's got the best record in the Western Conference right now, and the other thing we haven't talked about yet is Winnipeg came into our barn and kicked our butts 6-0 on a night when we unveiled our Stanley Cup finalist banner. Right. I'm looking for a response of some kind. But I'm kind of on the same train as Michael. We just won that game 7-1. We're feeling pretty good about ourselves. I'm feeling complacency. That's my fear. So I'm going to say 4-1 Jets.
Interesting. Very interesting. I thought I'd be the one that's getting the negative, but honestly, I think they're going to use it, and I think they're going to feel it and fuel it and bring it. They can often bring that A game when they know they have to, and their backs up against the wall. Whether this team realizes their backs up against the wall, Lotzie said it. There's bulletin board material out there. I think it's going to be just kind of like the Canucks did, like 5-2, maybe 6-2 Oilers. So that's what I got. I don't know. Michael, I think we're probably off the radio. We can finish off on YouTube if you want. Last word on your own show, or anybody else want to go around the horn?
Yeah, I'm happy to say the last word tonight on behalf of all the guys here anyway. Big thank you to everybody that contributed, everybody that took part, everybody that was around. These three guys here on the screen beside me did a bunch of different things. I can't thank you guys enough. Can't thank the listeners enough. But 28 grand. I mean, it is a big fucking deal, right? For an organization that needs it right now, more than anything. And, everybody has to be quite happy that they Bob's still in the chat.
Security.
Yeah. I can put him on a timeout. No, you know what? That's all I have to say. Like, thank you to you guys for being there and doing all of that. It was great. And it was just a ton of fun. And, great weekend. And so good to see both Edmonton Sports Talk, Heavy Hockey, everybody come around. Global News was there. The Belsey came out to play, which is absolutely great because alumni get paid to play in these games typically, and he didn't come and ask anybody for money to play.
And he hosted a show live from our event.
Yeah, so all of those things put together make for an awesome time, and it's going to get bigger and bigger every year. And I felt a different type of energy this year that was better than last year, and it's just going to continue down this path. And love surrounding myself with good people, and that's what happened this weekend. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah,
that's it for me. Have a good night, everybody. See you next week.
Oilers Live.